Welcome to Speak of the Devils, the premier podcast for Sun Devil football. I'm Brad Denny with 3TV.
And I'm Joe Healey with DevilsDigest.com.
Joe, it is the heart of the offseason. The temperatures are getting to that very uncomfortable, inhumane level here in the Valley. But that certainly doesn't mean things are quiet on the football fronts. It's Willy Wonka time in Tempe.
Yeah, like this time of year with this heat, you wouldn't like have a chocolate bar sitting in your hand outside for too terribly long, or even like a chocolate protein bar if you're me. But there have been a half dozen high school athletes across the state who have been gifted this miraculous golden ticket that could lead to a career in Sun Devil athletics. And we'll talk about that as well. Also, baseball making some noise in the transfer portal, and college baseball is done in the Big 12 officially as of last Sunday in the College World Series. I got to get my spite out there. What's the German word? Schadenfreude, something like that. Feeling that real big right now. Real happy with Coastal Carolina and Louisville, if you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, they're doing some good work out there. Yeah, Omaha never fails to entertain. Seeing that no hitter the other day is pretty good. But of course, the Wildcats heading home, perhaps the best part for Sun Devils everywhere. But as you mentioned, Joe, the golden tickets have been handed out. The much ballyhooed strategy pivot by Arizona State to jumpstart their local recruiting efforts is underway. On Sunday, they handed out 6 priority offers to members of the 2027 class. We're going to be diving into all that. We're going to be joined by Adam Beadle, who covers Arizona high school football for ArizonaVarsity.com, and one of the most plugged in young media members in the game today. He's going to give some expertise and insight into what's been going on the recruiting front. And also at the end of the show, we're going to be talking with a new 2026 commitment, defensive tackle Ro Derrick III. But first, Joe, some hardware was handed out kind of within the Sun Devil athletic department of its own. Every year, every coach of an ASU varsity squad has a vote for the Frank Kush Award for the best coach of the year. And no surprise, Kenny Dillingham has another piece of hardware for his mantle.
Yeah, I mean, that's got to be a no-brainer. I mean, obviously, there are many other coaches who had very successful seasons in their respective sports, but when you have the breadwinner of them all, which is football, always will be football, and you have the success that ASU had in doing it the way that Kenny Dillingham did and activating the Valley and bringing a Big 12 championship home to Tempe in that college football playoff appearance, nobody else that you could go for, nobody else deserves it at the level that Kenny Dillingham does. So, again, yet another nice little piece of hardware you can add to that trophy case that is seemingly growing day by day.
Now, speaking of Kenny Dillingham, one thing that he hasn't done really well since he got in Tempe is keep the top local talent in the state of Arizona. He had admitted as much the other day when he met with us after holding one of the ASU youth camps. And he outlined what he envisioned as a new pivot for ASU's local recruiting strategy. And that involved, after a couple weeks of cryptic tweets by him and the staff with some Willy Wonka gifts about the golden ticket, he outlined the initiative to target 6 2027 players that are going to be atop ASU's most desired list. We're going to be running down those guys here in just a moment. But, here's Kenny outlining exactly what he felt ASU needed to do to reverse years of lackluster local recruiting results.
The 15th is the first day we can talk to recruits. So that 15th for the 27th class, you're going to see, some special things going out to a select few of guys in the state. Myself, a lot of our staff I'm born and raised here. A lot of our staff is from here. We're trying to figure out this code to recruit the state. We're trying to figure it out, right? We're doing everything we can. Right, what we're doing right now isn't necessarily working at the highest level yet. So we're going to change our strategy, and to me, the definition of insanity is, or to everybody, is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results. So we're going to change it up. We're going to recruit the state a little different. People may not like it. They may like it. It doesn't matter, because what we're doing isn't working to attract the highest level player. I think we're trending in that direction, but we're going to be a little bit different in how we recruit the state to try to keep the best players in the state home. And that's part of the strategy to do that. Is it's going to be special to come here again. It's going to be special. It's going to be, wow, I'm one of the few people who get the opportunity to stay in state. And I think that's what we're trying to create, is that demand that ASU is a special place for the in-state guys.
All right, Joe, let's quickly run down the 6 recipients of the Golden Ticket before. We're talking with Adam Beadle to get his insight into the entire program. The number one player in the entire state in the 2027 class, a top 30 player nationally, offensive tackle Jake Hildebrand. Kind of a no-brainer, one of the stalwarts at Basha High School, along with his offensive mate there, running back Noah Roberts, number 2 per Rivals in the state of Arizona, and in his own right, number 75 nationally. So those are two kind of like no-brainers that this staff had to target.
Yeah, ASU is trying to, in a different way, awaken that sleeping giant, kind of like, what is it, the uncle or the grandfather or whatever, these memes with Willy Wonka, where there's the dude that's just lying in bed and he doesn't do anything until he gets a free trip to a chocolate factory and then he gets off his tail, something like that. So again, metaphors coming to life here. Hopefully nobody gets thrown in rivers and little people coming along to take you to your demise. So hopefully there's some differences there. But yeah, those two heavy hitters, big dogs there. I mean, ASU, they've had their struggles keeping top talent in state, and it feels like, those offensive linemen, the offensive tackles have been, really tough to get. You think back, gosh, it's been a while, it feels like, since ASU's gotten the elite offensive lineman, and maybe going back to my guy, Zach Schlink, who I bumped into not terribly long ago out in the west side there, Peoria Centennial legend there. So, guys like Hildebrand, I know, has seen him a lot talking about Texas. I'm not in tune with the local recruiting is nearly to the level of guys like Adam and Ralph that we've had on. But, there's obviously going to be some stiff competition for these players. Roberts, a do-it-all running back. And, man, you really feel like with Sean Iguano, who we both obviously praised time and time again, and rightfully so, and what ASU's done with their running backs, that this team should appeal. This offense should appeal to these skill position players. So maybe a guy like Roberts could be one where ASU can strike gold with that golden ticket.
And speaking of playmakers on the offensive side, the number 5 overall recruit in the state, number 164 nationally per Rivals, is a 4-star wide receiver out of Desert Edge, Zarek Sidney. He's a very dangerous playmaker as well, guy that could fit in. And again, on that offensive side ball, obviously you've seen what ASU's been able to do, and with the turnover at wide receiver that might be happening in the next couple of years, that could open up a good spot for him.
Yeah, young wide receivers out there should be excited about what's going on at Arizona State. Jordan Tyson could very well be playing his final year at ASU if all goes well and he jumps to the NFL draft, as many project him to do. So there'll be openings, and there is that reputation of being able to get guys the ball. So again, kind of like we're talking about with Roberts, any of these skill players for that ASU is pursuing should be able to look at what the staff is doing and did last year and really be intrigued. So hopefully they're some of the ones that ASU can get to stick home.
Number 8 in the top 10 locally and per Rivals rankings as a 3-star athlete, Jai Jones out of Chandler. Now, granted, that's Sean Iguano's old stomping grounds, but that, obviously their paths do not overlap. And then number 9, 3-star quarterback Cale Snyder, a high upside guy out of Perry, who's been a quarterback factory in recent years.
Yeah, so these are two guys that come from programs that have had success, and kind of like we'll talk about, Adam, about how, it's not just the numbers 1 through 6 in terms of the highest ranked players. The coaching staff didn't just go look on Rivals and say, okay, who are the top 6 guys? Let's give them the golden tickets. They got to be players that fit the culture and, basically just fit the mold of what ASU is looking for. So that's why, the first few, especially those first 2 high 4-star, top 100 caliber players in the nation. Whereas these still very, very good recruits, but just a little bit different in terms of their recruiting profile. And it could be a case of ASU, getting in on the early side of things. These guys still have, 2 full high school seasons left to play. So someone who's a 3-star now could be in a very different position by the time he's signed his letter of intent.
Yeah, and rounding out the group of 6, 3-star offensive lineman Benjamin Lowther, showing the West Side some love from Peoria Centennial High School. Now, it's kind of unfortunate, Joe, that there's no Moon Valley Rockets or Dobson Mustangs on this list, but maybe in the 28s or 29s.
Yeah, Dobson's really had. I mean, at least you had the McGahays and the Andrew Pettises and that sort of thing. Dobson, yeah, it's been some rough going there for quite a while. But yeah, like I just ironically mentioned another Centennial grad. When ASU had a great run of recruiting Centennial High School there, especially like in the Dennis Erickson years, Matt Lubick and those guys on the staff. And man, that guy's got some size, 6'8". We're going to hear some more about him and what he brings to the table. But that's one that, I believe I've seen some things about him growing up a Sun Devil fan and, just kind of hearing those statements, reading those things about a guy that make you think that he might want to stay home. So really curious to see how this whole initiative, ends up. you have to hold some confidence that they'll at least get a few out of it. As you'll hear, we'll get some outlook on that very topic, but it's creativity. When things aren't working, you can't define insanity, right? By doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. So you got to get creative. And we're living in a world where, people like to stand out. People like to have an edge over over their peers. And so if you have something like this, that is such an exclusive club, that's a nice little feather in the cap for anybody, but certainly a 16, 17-year-old high school student, and how that kind of makes them feel good about themselves.
So obviously, yeah, as you mentioned, extremely interesting initiative. As Kenny Dillingham said, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing and, expecting different results. So they're shaking things up a little bit, seeing what works. And, I think a nice side benefit to this is every time I see a golden ticket tweet out there, a GIF out there, I get some songs from the classic Gene Wilder film stuck in my head, which I was wondering, actually, do you think any of these 6 recipients have any idea who Gene Wilder is?
Gosh, I mean, because they may have seen, because Johnny Depp they did a remake a while back, but even for them, I mean, that was a while ago. That was at least 10 years ago, right? Like the remake of it.
Yeah.
So I mean, yeah, that one, goodness gracious. I mean, that is a little bit of a different concept. I'm trying to put that into perspective of, like, if when you and I were in high school, what that would have been, something, I don't know, from the 50s or 60s or whatever it would have been. So yeah, I would hope that maybe these players, if they got the golden ticket, they maybe like hopped on the streaming service and said, you know what, maybe I'll see what this movie's all about, and they can just bask in the oddness of it. But yeah, I would be surprised if any of them had any kind of prior knowledge on maybe even the movie, let alone the actor.
All right, so that's enough of us talking about the golden tickets. Let's bring in an expert on this to break it all down. With the Willy Wonkification of local recruiting and the golden tickets being put out, we had to bring in an expert on the topic, and also making a Speak of the Devil's debut, Adam Beadle, who covers Arizona high school football, one of the rising stars in the industry, who covers football for Arizona varsity. Adam, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, man. I mean, I practically have grown up watching this show and watching you guys do this, and so it's fun to make an appearance. And maybe someday I'll catch up to Ralph, but I think there's a start right now.
Yeah, first set your sights on Jack Loader. Take him down.
Yeah, gotta catch up to Jack first.
Get past Herm. Yeah, we'll get you in good company soon.
All right, so starting off, as Kenny Dillingham said, ASU's local strategy needed a refresh. They needed to try something different after years of relative disappointing returns. So what do you think of the kind of this golden ticket approach that's really kind of playing to the exclusivity of an offer from ASU?
I mean, I like it. I think it's a unique approach. And I say unique because it really isn't something that, at least the time I've been around, I've seen ASU kind of make an emphasis of before. And, Kenny's right. ASU has struggled recruiting the state for the last 20 years. They've gotten a few guys here or there, but I think that, the Arizona high school football world is getting enough recognition nowadays and getting to the point where, I think ASU is stepping in at the right time, going, it's time to recruit some of these guys in the state and make more an effort of it. And so I think this whole golden ticket idea, Kenny Dillingham being the Willy Wonka of all this, is pretty cool. It's a unique initiative, and the kids that they're targeting are some really, really talented kids.
So you mentioned about how this restructure, this creative idea is largely born out of ASU having some struggles for an extended period of time recruiting the state of Arizona. And this coaching staff was put together with some heavy hitters in the local Arizona high school recruiting scene. And obviously it's still relatively early, but it's been tough for them to secure some of those top tier recruits. Why do you think Kenny Dillingham staff, again, in just a few years, have had some issues in getting those top guys to stay at ASU?
Well, I think it's just the, lack of success with the staff had before them, right? I think that, when Kenny Dillingham got hired, there was a bad naming around Arizona State. I think everybody can kind of agree with that. Team wasn't exactly in the right spot. Obviously, his first year had a bit of a losing season, and that's tough. It's tough to recruit kids in the state that have kind of, seen an ASU team that hasn't really been great in recent years. I think probably the best year that ASU had before COVID was the 2019 season, right? So most of these guys that are playing high school football at that point in time were either seventh graders or sixth graders, or they were just in elementary school. And so depending on how much of into ASU these kids were, they just they hear the name ASU football, and they go, that's a team that hasn't really had a winning season when you go on to 2020, 2021, 2022, and then you get into 2023, and there's this cool guy named Kenny Dillingham that gets hired super young and is an alumni, starts to raise some eyebrows, and then he goes and brings in a couple guys that were recruits a couple years ago at colleges, didn't pan out, and they come to ASU. That's guys like Zach Swanson, guys like Tate Romney. You've got some local legends like Jacob Conover and DeCarlos Brooks that were absolute beasts at Chandler, that come to Arizona State for obviously Conover was there for a year. DeCarlos just finished this season, but Kenny immediately makes an emphasis that, recruiting Arizona is very important to him. And obviously one of the big keys in that was keeping Sean Aguano on his staff. Really, that's where to where we're at now, that's where this whole thing begins. If Sean Aguano isn't still at staff at ASU, we're not having this conversation right now. We're not talking about, the whole golden ticket operation. I think Sean Aguano was a key piece in making all this to where we're at now happen. Jason Mons obviously coming in was a big part of that happen. And then obviously some new additions to ASU staff as well. Jack Nudo, who's a safeties coach now at ASU, and then Cannon Siegel is another guy who, kind of has the same story as Dillingham. His high school career didn't really pan out. Comes to, was at Idaho State with Charlie Regal. And then when Regal comes over, it's Siegel comes over too, and now he's a part of that staff. So I think just seeing the progression of what this staff is. Okay, let's start out. Kenny had a message of, we're gonna, I think at the beginning it was like, go play somewhere for a few years, be good, and then come back here. And I think that first group of transfers that he brought in really was, these guys went somewhere for a few years, didn't really pan out, and now they're coming back to Arizona State, and now they're, getting some reps in the two deep and some second team and a couple guys starting here and there. But now we're seeing sort of this evolution of, okay, let's start 2023, and then 2024 they get a couple of high school guys to come in, Navi Bruzon, Gatorade Player of the Year. I think that was a huge land for Arizona State at the time. And now we're in 2025 where we've got a couple guys committed in the 26 class, and then you're obviously targeting the 27 class really heavily. I think ASU is they see a target and they're hitting the bullseye right now with what they're doing.
So it's only been a couple days now since the golden tickets have been actually handed out. And just in general sense, like, how do you feel that this initiative has been kind of received by the local high school football community at large?
I think they've taken it really well, and I think they're excited by it. I've talked to a lot of coaches over the last couple of days that have just, not necessarily in the loop entirely, like, hey, what's this? What's this golden ticket thing? What does it mean? And when they learn what it means, they're wowed by it. They think it's pretty cool. And like Kenny has said, he wants to make it sort of a goal for these players to earn these golden tickets. And I think the coaches see it that way too, that they should be coaching their players, or, getting a golden ticket from Arizona State should be a goal that players have on their list. So I think they've taken it really well. And I got to talk to Cale Snyder today, actually, who was one of the recipients. And he said that he felt like a priority getting one of those. And so I think they are excited about what the future holds in this initiative.
Now, I think we should just take a quick step back and maybe inform folks who are watching and listening. What exactly is this golden ticket? Are these the only guys that are going to get offered by ASU in the class? Is it a level of preference? Give us what information just on the basic level of what separates this from the normal scholarship offers we usually see.
Yeah, so I think the way I see it, obviously, just these aren't the only 2027 kids that ASU is going to be actively recruiting, right? The thing is, there's not 25 roster spots for 25 guys from Arizona, right? I'm sure Kenny Dillingham and the entire staff would love to just fill his roster with guys from Arizona, but unfortunately that's not the case. And especially with their success, you got to go out and get guys from Texas. You got to go out and get guys from California. But you can cut it down to six guys who they have that go, okay, these are guys that we believe can be playmakers at Arizona State, and can make plays at ASU. And I think that's exactly what they've done here. And they've done a pretty good job explaining it. And for people who still don't really understand it, this is ASU making a group of in-state guys a priority, and I think the key of it is letting people know that they are actively recruiting guys in the state, and including some of the top guys, obviously number 1 and number 2, and they at the end of the day they believe that these 6 guys that they're recruiting are at the top of their list and a priority to them, but they're also not done recruiting 27 guys. But I think it's a good message of hope to people who are concerned that ASU isn't recruiting kids in state, that yes, we are. And here's 6 of them that we believe can be playmakers here at ASU.
They mentioned ASU's recruiting in Texas. Obviously, they've made some significant progress there between players that have committed over the last few years or ones that they're in the running for against some top tier programs. They have the Texas to Tempe movement. We know what it is. How does that resonate with Arizona high school coaches and players to know that ASU has this effort going on with the whole kind of branded strategy to it that's happening in a state different from where the school's located?
Yeah, I mean, I think at the end of the day, high school coaches here and high school players here know that there are some absolute dogs in the state of Texas, and that, you know, Texas high school football and Arizona high school football are on 2 completely different levels. I think we have some teams here, and I say some because there's maybe 2 or 3 that could compete with some of the top teams in Texas. But at the end of the day, the level that high school football in Texas plays at is just completely different. And I think coaches are on the same page that the fan base is at, where ASU hasn't really had success in the last few years. They got to go out and get some playmakers, and I think now that ASU has gone out and get some playmakers, they can come dip in Arizona State a little bit more what they've done. But I don't think that coaches or players take it as like a offense in a way, as in, oh, you don't care about us sort of thing. Kenny Dillingham since day one has come in with the whole activate the valley thing, and I think that is still stuck around. I just think you can't ignore the fact that Texas is a whole other different level of high school football, and I probably could do my best to name every single team in the 6A division of Arizona high school football. I could not, for the life of me, memorize every single team at the level of 6A in Texas high school football. It's just completely different. So many, and like they say, everything's bigger in Texas. So
there you go. So back to the Golden Tickets. You mentioned some of them are your guys, but it's not just 1 through 6. So you have some of those players. You have some that are obviously very good recruits, but again, it's not just the top 6 according to Rivals that they're giving these to. What are some of the criteria that you think ASU is looking for when they selected the players who got these Golden Tickets?
I mean, speed and height, I think, are obviously the 2 biggest factors. I've heard Kenny Dillingham say before, like, we're going to be honest with you about, if you need to put on, a couple more pounds, if you maybe need to grow another inch. So I think that is the first criteria for these dudes. And then you go and you look at, okay, how are these people as a person? How do they work together with the team? And obviously the prior success that they had. And I think all the guys that they have lined up here are guys that could be future leaders down the road, guys that are developing and are really great players, and guys I think have a shot in playing in the NFL one day. And I think at the end of the day, that's the big key, is how we can get talent that we can develop, making it better people, better players, and get into the NFL.
All right, so going to put you on the spot. We're going to run down these 6 just real quick, real brief, just maybe a couple sentences on each. I want to get your quick scouting report for some names that the average ASU fan might not necessarily know. Let's start off with the top ranked recruit in this 2027 class locally, offensive tackle Jake Hildebrand out of Basha.
Yeah, Jake Hildebrand, he's a really strong guy, benches over 315 pounds. 6'6", 293, so we could call it 6'6", 300. But this is a guy that has been a leader for Basha up front since his freshman season. He's a guy that Basha really trusts. And I think he's going to be a future playmaker. I think there's still a couple things for him to work on, but strength-wise, it's absolutely there, and talent-wise, it's absolutely there. And this is a kid to keep your eye on down the road.
His Basha teammate, running back Noah Roberts.
Yeah, Noah is just a dude, and there's no other way to describe it. One of the quickest athletes in the state, and he not only can run, but he can catch too. And I think that's a big key for Noah in his game is that he can not only be sort of a power back, a speed back, but he can also be a receiving back. He kind of honestly, at times when I watch him play, reminds me of Kyson Brown a little bit, just the way he's able to maneuver around and make big plays. Explosive plays. I think that's the key for Noah. This is an explosive playmaker, and if you open a hole for him, he's gone.
All right, so those are the top 2 ranked players per rivals in the state. Now moving down to number 5, another 4-star wide receiver is Eric Sidney.
Yeah, Zarek Sidney is another big playmaker over at Desert Edge. So good to see Arizona State showing some love to the west side and the east side. This is a kid that's highly recruited. He's got a lot of SEC schools coming for him, a lot of Big Ten schools coming for him. But at the end of the day, this dude's just a playmaker, and he's one of those guys that when you're a quarterback, you kind of just go, you know what, Zarek's down there somewhere. You throw it, and there he is. He makes a play, and I saw him make a lot of plays like that last season, especially in the 5A playoffs. Helped lead his team to a state championship victory. Zarek is the biggest way to describe Zarek as a playmaker, 100%.
And then with traditional power, Chandler High School producing a 3-star Jai Jones.
I think Jai Jones is the most underrated player on this list. I believe he's the number I think he's top 10 in rivals. I'm not exactly sure, but Jai is a guy that obviously his dad played in the NFL. And he's spent some time playing for FSP on the OT7 circuit, which is one of the best teams in OT7. He didn't get to play a lot last year. He had to sit 5 games because he transferred from Corona del Sol to Chandler. But he surpassed his numbers from his freshman season only in 6 games in a sophomore season. So I think he's primed for a really big junior year. I've really seen him develop a lot over the course of the spring and summer. He's made some big plays in the 7-on-7 tournaments I've gotten to watch him play in this summer. And I think this is really going to be the first year for Jai where he has a really good quarterback in the backfield, and he's going to be the number 1 target this season. And so I think watching what he develops into this season is going to be really exciting to watch. And I think ASU fans are going to be surprised by some of the plays he's able to make.
Next up, the guy that you talked to tonight, quarterback Cale Snyder.
Yeah, Cale Snyder. I mean, talk about Perry High School. One quarterback comes into mind, and that's Brock Purdy. And I'd be lying if I said that Cale doesn't kind of show me some flashes of Brock Purdy, just his arm strength. Haven't quite seen, his ability on the ground yet, but I think that's, something he's looking to develop this season. I will say he put 15 to 20 pounds on this offseason, something Coach Ortiz over there at Perry was telling me about. In my opinion, this guy's the number 1 quarterback in Arizona in the 27 class. I think that the talent is there, the playmaking ability is there, the arm strength is there. I think that once he settles into a groove this season, he's going to look really good. And I think ASU fans should keep their eyes on Cale to make some big plays this season.
And rounding out the recipients of the Golden Tickets, offensive lineman Benjamin Lowther.
Yeah, this is a big dude, 6'8", over 300 pounds. I think one of the concerns you have with a 6'8" offensive lineman is he going to be able to move as quickly? And honestly, it's not a problem at all for Ben, and he's able to move around really well. And I like the way his frame is built. And something about Ben that sticks out to me more than some of these other guys is that he kind of just emulates that leadership, and you could see it on the field. And even though he's a younger guy, he's only going to be a junior. Obviously, he was a sophomore last season. I think he's one of those guys that takes initiative on his team, and that's what sticks out to me is that he's a natural leader. And I think, especially at ASU, we talk about the Pat Tillman team and all that stuff, the leadership council. This is a guy that if he comes to ASU, I could definitely see as a future part of that.
All right, so not necessarily going to put you on the hot seat right now and say which of these guys will sign with ASU, but what do you of these 6 right now? Where do you think, which of them do you think ASU is currently best positioned with?
I'll start with this. I think that for ASU to come out successful on this whole initiative is to hopefully land 2 out of the 6 guys. I think if you land 2 out of the 6 guys you have targeted to get in this first round of Golden Tickets, that should be a success for you, given you've got 2 guys already signed in the 26 class. Adding 2 of the top guys in the 27 class would be great. I would say the one guy I've seen, hang out around ASU staff more than probably any of these guys is Noah Roberts. He played with Basha when they came out to ASU 7-on-7 tournament, and then he just came out randomly just to hang out with the staff and talk with Coach Aguano. And I think that, again, that really helps, just the fact that ASU's running back coach is an in-state guy, and can develop that relationship with Noah. But I think I would definitely say that Noah is ASU's in the best position to potentially land Noah. I think Noah's on the top of their list. I'd also think that Kale is another guy that's possibly at the top of the list. And I say that because you look at, ASU doesn't really, in the 27 class, I don't think they need to go out and get, a 4-star or a 5-star quarterback. You've got a guy in Jake Fetty coming in the 26 class, and you've got a guy in Cam Dyer who's also still there, and assuming they'll probably, this is just saying, maybe they'll bring in a guy, the transfer portal after this season. And I think a guy like Kale would be a great guy to develop in the quarterback room for a couple of years. And maybe by the time, Fetty's gone, by the time Dyer's gone, Snoddy will get the opportunity. And I think that he'll be more than ready.
So playing a little devil's advocate here, let's say ASU goes over on it, strikes out on all 6. How does that reflect on the program, the staff, and this initiative?
I don't think it's anything bad. I personally don't think they'll go 0 for 6. I think that the chances of that happening are low, just because of the kids they're targeting and the relationships they've already built. But I think you go 0 for, you just go back to the drawing board and figure out what works. And I don't exactly know what the public reaction would be, because it's not like, it's not like people can go out and say they aren't making kids a priority, because they are with this. That's the truth of it. And the other truth of it is that sometimes kids don't want to be in, that sometimes the Arizona kids don't want to be in the 120-degree heat, and they want to go to the beach, or they want to go to somewhere with snow, because maybe they've never seen snow before. But I personally think that ASU won't go over, and if they do, I think that it would be honestly a shock to me.
So I've seen the 6 guys who did receive the golden ticket seem really appreciative and excited about being on that exclusive list on social media. Now, for the other 27 players in the class that didn't get the ticket, that you mentioned that the ASU is not just going to recruit those 6. Do you think that might have a negative effect? Maybe alienate feel them, in terms of how ASU is going to be viewed in terms of their recruitment, and have a kind of a uphill battle?
Yeah, I'd be lying if I said I didn't think that they would maybe take slight to that. I think obviously any time in any situation in life when someone doesn't make you feel, special or a priority, that kind of hurts you a bit. But I think we have a lot of athletes in the state that, do still dream of possibly playing for Arizona State. And even if that was an opportunity, they'd absolutely jump on it. But I think that's another thing too, of some of these 27 players still have, junior year is the season when you get in the film, you send it to the coaches, and then that summer coming out of your junior year, going into your senior year, is really when your recruitment picks up. So I think ASU did really good by, making this initiative early and as soon as possible when they were legally able to, obviously with the June 15th, opening up for coaches to talk to 27 players. And who's to say that, they maybe won't, what if they land 2 guys, maybe they don't land the other 4, and then they decide to go target another 4 guys that maybe haven't been as heavily recruited, and feel they still have a good chance. And so again, that just goes back to, just because a player might not be targeted right now doesn't mean he won't be targeted in the next 6 months or the next 12 months. So it'll be interesting to see how they recruit the rest of this 27 class, and I think it'll largely depend on the success of this whole golden ticket initiative.
So I'd imagine that the view of ASU from local high school football players is probably quite a bit different now than it was a year ago. What all have, even like the last 8 months, between what ASU did on the field last year and the expectations for 2025, and Sam Levitt being posted everywhere as not only a Heisman candidate, but guys like David Pollock calling him maybe the favorite. What changes have you seen among the high school players and how they view it? last year.
I think it's just chatter. I think that people in the state of Arizona and high school football, coaches and players are just talking about Arizona State again. Like that's the big deal. I think the spark was when Kenny Dillingham. I remember being I was on the sidelines of the 4A state championship in 2020. What was that, 2? When Kenny Dillingham got hired in November. And that was the chatter. The big chatter wasn't Eastmark just won their first, state championship. It was that, Kenny Dillingham just got hired at Arizona State, and a lot of people on that sideline knew who he was. And one of those players that was playing for Eastmark at the time was Ramar Williams, and Kenny Dillingham ended landing Ramar Williams in that class. So, I think it's just the fact that people are talking about it. People, I bring up Sam Levitt to a quarterback, and he's like, "Oh, that guy's so good. Like he's probably going to win the Heisman next year." And I mean, of course, when you got a guy like Cam Scadaboo, when high school kids are hyped up by Cam Scadaboo edits and Cam Scadaboo making plays, like he's just a dude. And so when high school players see him just steamrolling through guys, that gives them hypes, and that gives them something to talk about. And I certainly think that a lot of the high school coaches in the state have nothing but good things to say about Arizona State, and I think that rubs off on the players. And when they go and take unofficial visits, or they go watch games, they see that too. And the truth of it is that a lot of these players in the state grew up watching ASU. And obviously when you're a high school football player, there's not a lot of opportunities to, maybe go watch an ASU game just because you have such a busy schedule and all that. But I think that even the players themselves and the coaches themselves in today's day, with how good ASU has become, makes it a priority themselves to go watch ASU. So I think if the two can, correlate, where ASU is making a priority to watch these players, and these players are making a priority to watch ASU, then that should make it a lot easier for the Sun Devils to recruit these prospects.
Yeah, so 25 ago, and Brad and I were students at ASU. Sun Devils actually did a pretty good job at landing the elite in-state prospects, the Terrell Suggs, the Zach Millers, Kyle Caldwells, and so on. That was a very different landscape of high school football within the state of Arizona, that's for sure. What do you think it's going to take for ASU to get back to that level? I don't anticipate that high school prospects from Arizona are getting recruited nationally. So I think it's unrealistic to expect that you're going to just, get a clean sweep of the elites. But to get more points on the board, what's it going to take for ASU?
I think ASU's just got to keep doing what they're doing. I think they just got to keep winning. I talked to Dillingham almost exactly a year ago this time, and he told me that they're not landing in-state kids right now. They know that, but they know they're going to have to win first, and then maybe that's when they'll start to come. And I honestly think they probably are at this point where they're recruiting these players sooner than maybe they thought they would be. And I think everybody else would agree that, obviously nobody expected ASU to win the Big 12 this year and make the college football playoff. And that has kind of boosts some of the things they're doing as a staff. And I think this whole I think they chose the right time to jump in and say, okay, now's when we got to start recruiting kids, is when they're winning. So I think the key for ASU to potentially land in more in-state kids is just continue to win and continue to do what they're doing right now, and just like they're doing with this golden tickets, just continue to make in-state kids feel like they're a priority.
Adam, appearance number 1 on Speak of the Devils. Ooh, it was a good one. Thank you so much for your time, your expertise, your insight into this. A lot of great stuff, a lot of great ground covered. As mentioned, you're one of the hardest working folks in the local sports media industry. A lot going on. How can folks keep up with you?
Follow me on Twitter at the real Beadle. Not spelled with a T, spelled with a D. That's where I do a lot of stuff. Also, ArizonaVarsity.com, a lot of high school stuff. But if you see me on the sidelines at a high school football game, come see what's up. I love talking to people, and I'm a very social person. Just I feel like I'm a joy to be around. So anytime people want to come chat it up, I'm always down. And yeah, but I appreciate you guys having me. And yeah, so Joe was saying that you guys were students at ASU 25 years ago. I wasn't even born yet. So just had to throw that out there.
Yeah, The new generation. That's what we'll call you. There you go.
Well, yeah, but I appreciate you guys. Appreciate the kind words, and yeah, absolutely glad to be here.
All right, so thanks again, and we'll definitely have you back on so you can catch Jack Loader and maybe Ralph Hampson one day.
Totally. We'll see. Thanks, guys.
All right. So as we mentioned, college baseball in the Big 12 and for ASU is officially over. The College World Series still going on. A lot of excitement there. Encourage you to tune in for some stress-free viewing, which is kind of nice when you don't have to watch something, watch something, just hoping that somebody loses. That is pretty rough. So of course, even though ASU lost in the regional round, they got to work immediately. It was not time for summer vacations and golf trips and things like that. The coaching staff started hitting that transfer portal hot and heavy. As we talked about last week, as far as departures, the most notable one as of right now is still infielder Jax Ryan. But before we talk about the players that ASU has gotten commitments from so far out of the portal, let's just take a quick little recap on some of the players outside of the outgoing transfer that ASU baseball is going to lose. So of the notable seniors from 2025, you have infielder Matt King, obviously just did an incredible job with what he did in his 1 year as a Sun Devil. Jacob Tobias, Mr. Sun Devil. I don't know that there'll be, someone like him again that did what he did at ASU for 4 straight years. Josiah Crom, wicket catcher, who had a solid season. Of course, pitcher Jack Martin, major pickup from the transfer portal. They've got a bunch of guys that are draft eligible, but still have extra eligibility to play at the college level. Brandon Compton, new Contradas, really eager to see what happens with him. He's just been injured so much. I don't know that he's got a high ceiling at the draft level quite yet. Isaiah Jackson, of course, had an incredible year. Ben Jacobs, Kean Vu, Kyle Walker. So these are all guys that are draft eligible, but have the ability to come back. I've seen some clips. I know there's been some MLB combine type of stuff. I saw, Brandon Compton taking swings there, and other footage of Isaiah Jackson, Ben Jacobs out there. So, ASU, if all these guys get drafted, you could see a pretty high number of, maybe somewhere between 7 to 9 or 10 guys getting picked as far as some of these names. So that's just, what to keep in mind. Once the MLB draft occurs, we'll see how that unfolds and if any of the players who are draft eligible and are picked choose to come back. But for now, we're going to take a look at the 6 players. That's kind of a theme here. You got the 6 golden tickets. ASU so far, 6 transfer commits out of the portal. Starting with an interesting one, outfielder George Bilecki from Lewis University, which is a Division II school. He is draft eligible, but he'll be a senior in 2026. Batted .361 last year, 23 home runs, 66 RBI in 55 games. He also stole 18 bases, tied for 10th at the Division II level this past season in home runs. So you'll see that as kind of a theme. Some big bats coming in. So Bilecki's an interesting one. Again, coming up a level, kind of maybe like Kevin Karstetter did year before last. So if you can hit, you can hit. And if you can bring anything like that power to the D1 level, to the Big 12, it's going to be a big pickup for ASU.
Yeah, when you're launching 20 plus bombs and hitting 360 and I think slugging over 800, that's pretty good. Now, of course, the question is how's that's going to translate from the D2 level on up. But as we run down these things, I mean, there's a lot of very intriguing and potent bats in this lineup. And you mentioned a lot of those departing guys are going to be out there. And I think Bilecki right there in terms of just, the kind of reshaping the outfield a little bit. And, I think, it's a really, interesting, potentially, low or high ceiling, but perhaps, boomer bust situation there with Bilecki.
Yeah. And then moving on to infielder Dominic Longo from Utah Valley. He began his career at the JUCO level in 2024, played 1 season at Utah Valley. You might know they made a regional. They beat Oregon in the opening game of their regional before losing to Arizona and then Cal Poly. So, they essentially kind of had the same level of success postseason-wise as ASU did. He batted .306 with 11 home runs and with 60 RBI in 61 games. He also stole 22 bases. You think about how much ASU was stealing bases this past year. Their team leader was Kyle Walker, who had 22. So for as much as they were running, this guy brings similar type of speed to the lineup. He was second team all WAC this past year. So that's, again, a solid pickup that you're very, very likely going to be replacing both those middle infielders. Third base is a question mark. First base is going to be open as well. So you've got just a lot of places to fill in this lineup. And, Longo's a guy that did it at the Division I level at a team that had a successful season in 2025.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head right there in terms of just the amount of infield spots and reps and games and at bats that they're going to be needing to replace over the course of next season with so many of those key guys that are gone or perhaps likely to be gone depending on the draft status there. And a guy like Nukatratis, you just wonder if he's able to ever stay healthy. And certainly, given his track record, you'd love him in there, but you can't count on him. So having a guy, a number of these guys having the ability to play multiple spots on the infield is going to be huge.
Yeah, it's coincidental to bring up Contreras because the next player kind of has a similar thing from the last 2 years. Actually, these next two transfers that we'll talk about are ones that have had some recent injury issues, but they have a high upside when they are healthy. Starting with infielder Garrett Michelle, he's out of Virginia Tech. He played 27 games in 2025, but he's only played 36 games over the last 2 years. 272 hitter with 2 home runs this past year. So he was at Virginia Tech for 3 years. He had a good freshman year, 2023, batted .339 with 11 home runs. That's real solid stuff. So if he can get anywhere near that sort of form, that's going to be a plus. But again, kind of like Contreras, some injury issues the last 2 years. So we'll see what comes to the table when he arrives in Tempe.
Especially when you're with Tobias leaving, that first base spot's going to be wide open, and a guy that you're hoping if maybe he can get out here, the desert air does him some good, and he's able to stay in that lineup there. That could be a very potent bat at first.
And another one, similar thing, is Matthew Polk out of Vanderbilt, a utility player. Kind of rare still that he'll be a fifth-year player in 2026. He was injured for all of 2025, but he batted .316 in 2024. You got to give that an oh hell yeah on the .316. So again, someone that if you can get the healthy version of him, then that can be a plus.
Yeah, especially coming from power like Vandy, that's a huge plus for the Devils there, and especially in an outfield where maybe not to the extent of the infield because you have some more returning guys that can factor in, but having a guy of that pedigree and the coaching staff with the Commodores really thought highly of him, so that could be a very a big time under the radar pickup for the Devils.
And then this one coming up next, so far to me, and I think pretty obviously the biggest addition so far. Really impressed by just about everything about him. That's Dean Toigo from UNLV. 2025 Mountain West Conference Co-Player of the Year, first team All Mountain West Conference. He's had an interesting story. He came to UNLV after playing at the NAIA level at Hope International, which is an interesting name for a university. But last year he batted .377, 18 home runs, 74 RBI in 54 games, tied for 18th nationally in RBI, ranked 44th in the nation in batting average. This is a dude that can just flat out hit, and you're going to have to replace some major bats no matter what happens, and especially if you get kind of cleaned out from the draft, as is likely to be the case. This is someone that you can very likely point to as maybe being the biggest bat in the lineup next year if he can continue doing in Tempe what he did in Vegas.
I believe left-handed hitter, and that is definitely a hitter-friendly venue at Phoenix Muni, and those are some staggering numbers. And a guy that worked his way up from the lower levels of the sport. So we talked about some of the other guys like George Bilecki and that ilk. That's a nice pathway there. And yeah, that is the one that obviously has got a lot of ASU fans really excited about what he can do if he can even replicate that. With the Sun Devils, that is going to be a massive boost for ASU's lineup.
And the last one on the list to round things out is a generally familiar face in terms of a Big 12 foe. Infielder Austin Rolig from Utah. He was honorable mention All Big 12 and a member of the Big 12 All Freshman team this past year. He redshirted at LSU in 2024. Obviously, talked about Vanderbilt being one of those elite blue blood baseball teams where Polk is coming from. Rolig's got a similar pedigree in terms of the time spent at LSU. He batted .341 last year as a redshirt freshman, good for 14th in the Big 12. Not a big power hitter. I think he only had 1 home run, but man, if you can hit, you can hit. And again, you're looking across the board, and all these guys that ASU's got locked in so far, well over 300 pretty much, and guys that are even the 340, 370 range. So, kind of like when they got Kyle Walker last year from, I believe, Grambling State. Didn't know much about him, but you look at the numbers like, man, this guy is just regularly hitting 330, 340, 350. And he did every bit of that in Tempe this past year. So getting some bats here for sure. And I know that there are obviously some pieces that need to still be filled. And a lot of Sun Devil fans are pointing in one particular direction.
Yeah, and real quick on Rolig, one thing that jumps out to me, obviously, what he was able to do and get the postseason recognition, but heading into his redshirt sophomore season. So some of these guys come into ASU, they're there for a year or so, the Matt Kings, if you will. But this is a guy who could factor in as a cornerstone piece for a few seasons ahead. But you mentioned Joe. I mean, a lot of very impressive bats. The guys that putting up some impressive numbers in terms of the slugging percentage on base, how they're hitting and driving in runs. Where are the arms? I mean, obviously, pitching has been such an issue in recent years. ASU is going to be losing some key guys. Where are the arms so far?
Yeah, I mean, you figure to lose Friday and Saturday starter. Of course, Martinez was a senior, and Ben Jacobs. It's hard to imagine a scenario where he gets drafted at a spot that brings him back to ASU. So just by default, you've got to replace those guys. But again, even if they were to be back, you still need to improve this pitching staff. So yeah, a lot of folks are going to be looking at that. Naturally, there's a long way to go, and I'm sure they're going to bring in a pretty hefty transfer class. But that is at the top of the list. You really have to go and get some accomplished arms, guys that can come in that have some proof in the pudding, so to speak, because that is going to be the thing that gets ASU over the hump if they are going to get over the hump, over Willie Bloomquist and keep this trajectory going. Okay, check that box again in the postseason. Now that's no longer going to be just the bare minimum expectation. You're going to expect to build on that. That's going to be difficult because of the fact of the roster overhaul ASU has. And again, from the starting pitching to the bullpen, whether it's weekend, midweek guys, whatever the case may be, you got a piece like Cole Carlone coming back, of course, and that's a very, very important one. But you got to build around that. So I'm going to be really eager to see how things, shake out in the coming weeks and the arms that they're able to add from the portal.
Yeah, we'll certainly be staying on top of all of that. But before we close things out, ASU picked up a recent piece. We talked about in our last episode with Ralph Amsden. Ro Derrick III, defensive lineman in the 2026 class from the Waco area, as we learned last week, Joe, home of the Dr. Pepper headquarters and hometown of Jennifer Love Hewitt.
Yeah, we learned a little bit of a geography lesson. I saw on Twitter, I apologize, forget who made the comment. I guess they replied that Dr. Pepper museum is not that enticing. I guess they got a pretty mild grade from someone who had been there. But you know what? We'll see. We all love a good Dr. Pepper. We'll give it a shot there. But yeah, we had another addition to the fame of Waco, Texas.
Yeah, and certainly what's not getting a mild grade is Ro Derrick III potential. He was the latest member to commit to ASU 2026 class, and of course, a member of the Texas Tempe pipeline. So get to know ASU's newest defensive tackle commit. All right, Ro, let's start off with the big question. Why was Arizona State the right place for you?
Sure, I'd say just the people, the coaching staff, the area was really nice. I mean, it was just paradise to me.
So, obviously you made your visit out here and you got to see the facilities up close. You got to meet the coaching staff, the players, face to face. What were some of the things that made the biggest impression on you during your time in Tempe?
I'd say just the relatability to Coach Dillingham, Coach Reynolds. It didn't seem like there was some big intimidating type of person. It was just they were relatable.
Speaking of relatability, obviously Kenny Dillingham still one of the youngest coaches in the entire country, but still a pretty formidable resume throughout his young career, including obviously a Big 12 title. What really jumps out to you most about Coach Dillingham? What makes him an effective coach, and what excites you most about playing for him for the next few years?
Sure, him being so young and still being able to go to the playoffs, and also embarrassing the Longhorns. And it's he's this young right now. Imagine in 5 years or next year, he's gonna be crazy.
Now, reportedly, one of the things he likes to do on some recruiting weekends is pull out some magic tricks. Was he pulling out any tricks during the visit?
He did. I mean, he did that little finger thing. I'm like, okay. I mean, I know how to do that, but it's cool.
So no card tricks this time?
Nah, I didn't see none.
When obviously, also when you were there, what was kind of your read on the program culture and just kind of the environment and atmosphere that this Sun Devil football program has put in place?
It's the culture wise, they all all the players were cool with each other, offense to defense. I saw a cornerback hanging with a running back. They was walking in the halls while I was on my visit and stuff, and just how modern they act. They have a modern attitude. And I'm like, that's real mature.
Of course, another key figure in your recruitment has been recruiting director Isaiah Williams. What kind of impact has he had, and what really makes him so effective in terms of showcasing what Arizona State has to offer?
He did an amazing job. He like even when he first started recruiting me, he like showed me pictures and like told me how it really was. And I believed him, but when I saw it, I was like, that really is how it is. And like him and my parents get along like amazing. Like they listen to the same stuff. I mean, he's really like an uncle to be honest.
And of course, your future position coach in the D line for the Devils, Dyron Reynolds. Obviously, a guy pretty formidable resume, has a Super Bowl ring, and put Dwight Freeney, helped develop him into a Hall of Famer. What jumps out to you most about playing for Coach Reynolds for the next few years?
Coach Reynolds, just his IQ, like in his like how long he's been coaching, he knows a lot. And I think that he can do an amazing job. I know he'll do an amazing job on coaching me.
And of course, you're the latest in the Texas to Tempe pipeline. I believe now full, about half of this 2026 class is composed of Texans making the trip to Tempe, and obviously so many already there. How much of a factor was that, knowing that you got a lot of Texans with you now, and already that'll be there in Tempe for you?
I mean, I didn't know at first, but like me knowing now, it just makes it even more like motivating. Like I'm gonna go down there, relate with like some Texas boys, and be like I already knew some of them from Carpus Cove, the O lineman, inside O lineman. I forgot his name, Marquez Uini or something like that.
Yeah.
I know he goes to Carpus Cove. I know Coach Anderson up there because I played basketball for him back then. He's real chill, stuff like that. But just knowing that like it's Texas people already there is gonna like make me feel more at home.
What makes guys who've played Texas high school ball different than perhaps anywhere else in the country?
I'd say just the level. Not saying that other places aren't like as high as level as Texas, but I think Texas has bigger people, better facilities. Not saying that like high school wise, it most definitely do.
Mhm.
And I'd say just like it's more competitive in Texas.
So, for any ASU fans who might not have caught your film, give our viewers and listeners a scouting report. What kind of skill set are you bringing to the field?
Shoot, speed, power, fast off the ball. I mean, I run everywhere. I run across the field, look for the ball. Shoot, that's really it.
Obviously, you have the ability to play on inside and outside. Where does this coaching staff see you in the future?
They can send me a tackle, D tackle.
And so, what are when you get to know you've gotten to know this defensive scheme of defensive coordinator Brian Ward. What jumps out to you most about how they like to use the D line and specifically those D tackles in the future?
The thing that stood out to me is like I like at the high school level, tackles are like they have like one job and that's just like maintain their gaps and then like let linebackers and stuff make tackles. But like when I saw like their film and how like getting washed and like them making the tackles, it was like it made more sense to me compared to like the high school level, but it also stood out to me and like you can still make tackles being a D tackle.
And of course, as a defender who's given a number of big hits over the years, what's your favorite part of just laying out a ball carrier and delivering a huge hit?
I'd say just like how it feels, like not just hitting them, but then like after that you hear like the crowd and stuff, and then it's just like you just did it, and it's a crazy feeling to me, like just hitting them. To be honest,
Is there one hit in your career that maybe stands above the other, like where where everything kind of lined up perfectly and it was just like one of the perfect hits that you delivered?
probably it was like a TFL. He like ran inside. I seen him. And then my other D tackle, another D tackle was on the edge. I was playing defensive end at the time, and he came in and he hit him on one side. I hit him on the other, and then it was like a big old clank. And I was like, that was actually pretty clean.
So obviously, a skilled player on the field, but what kind of person is this Sun Devil program getting off the field? Because obviously, this is a program that prioritizes a young man of character.
It does. I say, me talking to Skip, Coach Skip does an amazing job keeping the boys on track. I think he'll do an amazing job with me, keeping me on track when I get to Arizona State. And also the Barron program, Miss Carter, I really would like to like do the Barron program. I think it'll be amazing for me and like just being able to, like, to challenge myself and whatnot.
It kind of leads to my next question. I know that you have Barrett honors college aspirations, and you're excelling in the classroom as well as on the field. For you, has that always been something that's been easy to find that balance of getting, because obviously the demands of being a player are, pretty rigorous, as well as being a good student. How have you been able to find that proper balance to do so well on both?
I'd say it's well, my parents are both in education, so I've always had a parent either with me like on campus or like I could just text them and ask them for help because like my mom has been a counselor, an English teacher, a teaching aide, like she's been about everything, and my dad's been an AP, sped teacher, a history teacher, like he's been everything too. So I mean, they have high expectations for me not to fail in the classroom.
Ultimately, down the road academically, what are the things you want to study? What do you want to major in as a Sun Devil?
I want to major in business, start real estate. I know there's a lot of they're building a lot of things and a lot of like new apartments in Arizona.
Oh yeah.
So hopefully I can buy one of those, rent them out, and just get more income.
Ultimately, you got one more season at the high school level. What are some of the goals that you've set for yourself that you want to accomplish this fall, and also not just for your team and yourself, but maybe get ready for making that jump up to major college football?
Some goals I have for myself, at least at minimum 10 sacks. Um, I only have a tackle range. Just a lot of tackles, 100% effort all the time, to be honest. And the way I'm gonna jump, I say jumping from college, from high school to college. I mean, I'm gonna graduate early, so I think me training like that first 9 months before like my actual classes start, I think that'll help me a lot.
And ultimately, a couple of falls down the road, and when you're running out through Tillman Tunnel past the Pat Tillman statue in that maroon and gold uniform and in a sold out Mountain America Stadium, and what's going to mean to you to kind of accomplish that goal and of playing major college football and taking the field as a Sun Devil?
It was just like how far I've made it, to be honest. Like it'll just really just recall on how far I've made it from playing like junior year, so or my upcoming senior year, and then to now is. I think once I'm there, like once I'm in the moment, I think it'll like really hit me.
And that's going to do it for this episode of Speak of the Devils. I'd like to thank our guests, Adam Beadle and Ro Derrick III. Even though it is the middle of the summer, there's no offseason for Sun Devil athletic news, updates, and discussion. We've got some great ideas in the hopper over the coming weeks. So make sure you stay with us on the social media side. Follow the show on Twitter at SOTD Podcast, on Instagram at Speak of the Devils. Subscribe on YouTube. Follow us on Facebook. Give me a follow on all things social at BDenny29.
And you can follow me at Joe Healey 42. And as always, a huge thank you. Shout out to our awesome sponsors. The list consists of Cactus Sports, Jones Auto Group, Burrito Express, DevilsDigest.com, Spaghetti Shack, and Sun Devil Family Charities.
As well as Home Field Apparel. Make sure you get 15% off your first order from the good brand by using offer code SUN24, that's SUN24, at checkout at homefieldapparel.com. And once you're done supporting our amazing sponsors, make sure to drop us a 5-star review on the podcast platform of your choice. Joe and I will be back. As we mentioned, it's the off season, but not for us. We'll be back talking about the latest developments with your Sun Devils next week.